And we are live. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you are new. We talk about global heating and climate change here. And today I'm going to say some things that, if you've been here many times before, you won't be too surprised, but it needs to be said again. So here we go. Donald, speaking now, Donald John Trump was reelected president of the United States last Tuesday. And in the time since, people have been trying to figure out, so what does that mean for, global politics, global economics, trade wars, uh, the sacred American way of life. The Heritage Foundation now has a 2025 first year manifesto that they expect Donald Trump to follow. And it's pretty horrific. There's almost no part of America that doesn't get upended in some way or another. So it's worth saying, however, that politicians frequently, utterly, completely fail to follow through on their commitments during elections. They say a lot of things, and they'll say one thing to one group on one side of the street, cross the street to a different rally, and say exactly the opposite to another group of people. And so long as those people never meet up and compare notes, they get away with it, right? So we know politicians do that. That's the nature of politics. And just to be very clear, it's also the nature of economics. Economists will say one thing on Monday and say something completely opposite on Friday. And they when they're professors lecturing students, they have one particular set of things to teach. And when they're talking to the president or the cabinet or at some economic forum, they talk something often completely different. And then when they're Treasury Secretary, they do a third thing that's a completely different approach. So none of these things matter. And they don't matter because they don't matter. Politicians lie all the time. That's why we got Donald Trump, because people hate that politicians lie. So they elected a non-politician who's going to supposedly destroy the system and rebuild it from scratch. Really? That's what you think is going to happen? Oh, I don't think so. But hey, whatever. It's worth a shot, right? So nothing is going to change in politics. Nothing's going to change in economics. And lest I leave anyone out, nothing's going to change in religion. There's a reason why we have 10,000 religions. There's a reason why there's 1,000 different types of Christianity and 1,000 different types of Islam. There's a reason why these things basically don't work, because they're not real. And politics isn't real, and economics isn't real, and religion isn't real. So it can just be whatever it needs to be tomorrow, and it'll be something different tomorrow, the day after. That's how it works. Now, one thing that these politicians and economists and religious figures were never promising anyone, ever, I mean, not in a substantial way, was that they were going to do anything about carbon dioxide emissions, which are enhancing the greenhouse effect, which is in turn heating the planet. No one ever did that. Now, that's a real thing. The physics of global heating and the physics of carbon emissions as we burn fossil fuels, which are real things, and we do burn them, that's real, and we need to burn them, that's also real. If we don't burn them, we die, which is a real thing. I mean, dead people are dead. They're real people who are really dead. So if we don't burn fossil fuels, that's going to be a calamity. And these are all real things. But we don't address the real things. Instead, because that's painful. That's painful. Dealing with reality is always the more difficult choice. Dealing with reality can be really painful. People would much rather deal with make-believe, because they can make believe. That's the nature of make-believe fake things, is you're just making it up as you go. So make up whatever makes you feel better, or makes whatever makes that other person feel better. We still teach children about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. We don't have to do that, but we do that. Do we teach them physics? Oh, well, no. Do we talk to them about the reality of death? Well, no, we can't do that. Do we, talk to them about, the species extinction and the sixth mass extinction? Well, no, that would be a real downer. They'd be really sad. Okay, so we don't do that, but we'll talk to them all day about the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus until they finally, get old enough to figure it out on their own and realize that we've been lying to them. But that's okay because now that they've been lied to all their lives as little children, now a whole bunch of other people are going to come along and lie to them about politics, economics, and religion. And most of that they will accept without even contemplating the implications of doing so. They'll simply say, "Oh, politics. Oh, yes, that's very important. Goodness gracious, economics. Oh, we need economic growth. My heavens, why can't we have more? There's not nearly enough to suit me." And religion. Oh my goodness, yes, of course. I go to church. I go to mosque. I pray 5 times a day to Mecca, and I wear a certain color, and I put things over my head, and I wear things around my waist, and I eat my food a certain way, and there's other things I don't eat, and all this stuff is all made up, right? But they do it, and they don't question it. So people are primed to believe, make believe things. And we live our lives in completely submerged up to our eyeballs, drowning in make believe. And so it's no surprise at all when politicians and economists and religious leaders completely ignore uh, carbon emissions really leading to global heating and whatever comes from that, because that's real. And did they pander through and about fakeness, fake things, made up things, imaginary things? All by way of saying that just because Donald John Trump is now president doesn't mean that our approach to global heating and carbon emissions and everything that's allied with that is now suddenly going to change for the negative, for the worst, because it was never changing for the better. No politician has ever weighed in on this in a real way. No economist has ever weighed in on this in a real way. Not even to say, except to say maybe that it's fake. Donald Trump will tell you till the cows come home, "Oh yeah, it's fake," or he'll say something else. "Oh, it's caused by the Chinese." Okay, well either it's fake or it's caused by the Chinese. So which is it? Well, he doesn't have to make that distinction. He'll just tell you it's fake, and if it's real, it's caused by the Chinese. And people are like, "Yeah, sounds good to me," because they want to be lied to. No, it started out when they were 3 years old, and someone told them about Santa Claus, and it's been lies ever since. And they're comforting lies, and we like the lies and the economic growth and everything else. And we never talk about consumption of fossil fuels as the dirty secret to economic growth. We just never do. They don't even do that in economics. I can't tell you how many times I've sat and listened to an economist tell us this. Oh yes, it's all about managing debt and the creation of money and interest rates. I'm like, no, it has to do with fossil fuels. Your economic growth is tied 100% to the increase in the fossil fuel consumption. Didn't you? Why? How could you not know that? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That would be physics. And you're an economist. I'm so sorry. Yeah, never mind me. You just do what you do because you're an economist. You can't possibly incorporate physics into anything you ever think about because including physics in any of your prognostications about the economy would impose limits, because the real world has limits and they're real. And there's a limit to how much carbon dioxide you can throw into the atmosphere burning fossil fuels and not have an impact. That's a real thing. That's a real limit. And we have exceeded that limit. They don't care. They're never going to care. And when you go on YouTube and people are saying, "Oh, Irma Gerd, it's going to be terrible. Donald Trump, he's going to pull us out of the Paris Climate Accords." Oh, wait, he already did that. Okay, and all these terrible things are going to happen, and we're not going to take climate action, and we're not going to, all the climate activists are going to be thrown in prison, and it's like those people were never doing any good anyway. They should just stay home. It's not worth going to prison for your climate activism or your climate actions, because none of that stuff is going to get us off of fossil fuels. What is your problem? Oh, I say your problem. Of course, it's politics. You're gluing yourself to a tractor because you're engaging in politics. It's opposition politics. That's fine. You can be in opposition. You can be on that side of the street, but it's still politics, and it's completely unreal. And unless you're going to find some way to get yourself off of fossil fuels and maybe even recommend that to the rest of us, then we're kind of seriously fucked. And go ahead and glue yourself to a tractor. That's not going to get us off of fossil fuels. It's just performance theater. And it makes you feel good about yourself as you drive and fly and do all the things you're going to do. Hell, people fly to other countries to engage in their climate protests. How unhinged is that? That's completely unhinged. We're about to have COP29, COP29, Conference of the Parties. Lying sacks of shit. They won't even tell you what they're talking about. They won't even tell you because it would be disturbing to the hoi polloi, to the little children who have to get to work every day if the people knew that they were meeting to talk about climate. But that's what they're doing. They're talking about the climate crisis. We're up to 29. You know, there's one COP a year. That's nearly 30 years of these people meeting, you know, having the great dinners, listening to the talks, very grave, stroking their beards. Yes, this is very serious. This is quite serious. And then going home and telling their people, well, nothing happened. So carry on. BAU, business as usual. Don't worry. I defended your sacred rights to have economic growth and fastering and biggering and bettering and whatever else. And so don't worry. Nothing happened at 29. And I promise you, if you send me next year, nothing will happen at COP 30 or COP 31 or COP 32 or COP 33, because that's the point of them going there. They are representing at these climate summits the necessities of economics and politics, the necessities, the reality, the political realities, which is a dubious thing to say because that's a contradiction in terms. Politics isn't real. Politics doesn't do the real. And so you can't talk about political realities. You can talk about political lies. You can talk political maneuvering. You can talk a lot about politics. You talk about Machiavellian politics. You can go on and on and on about theories of politics, but you can't say political realities because there's nothing real about it. Not from the base, not from the roots, not to the tips. None of it is real. It's all made up. It's entirely made up by us. Then there's been every kind of political movement, every kind of economic movement, every kind of treatise has been published, every kind of manifesto. We've had, socialism and Marxism and communism and capitalism and every combination of those things and every type of government possible. And all of them are dedicated to the same thing, digging up fossil fuels and setting them on fire to improve, wealth and the quality of life, which is not a bad thing. We like our internet. We like our electricity. We like our cars and we like our freeways and we like our import of food. We like all those things. Here I am and liking those things and enjoying them. Where's my, I don't have anything here. Anyway, well, shoot. Reading glasses made out of plastic. I pay like $4 a pair for these, right? Used to be to have reading glasses, you had to grind lenses from glass and then fit them to a frame made out of whatever kind of plasticky thing you could use. They used to use tortoiseshell because tortoiseshell is like a natural plastic. So you had to make lenses, one lens at a time by grinding them. And they usually made them round. That's why most glasses used to be round. And then they'd mount them in tortoise shells. And all this was done by hand. And I don't know, not everybody had reading glasses, right? Only rich people had reading glasses. So here I hold a $4 pair of reading glasses. And by the way, I have like 3 pairs of these. And I leave them all around. And when I lose one, I go online and I buy another pair. That's progress. That's fossil fuels. In fact, the plastics in this come 100% from fossil fuels. There's a little bit of metal in the hinges, but that also comes from fossil fuels. What's this metal? It's iron, chrome, nickel, right? Some sort of alloy. You know, it's just a little tiny hinge. It probably costs less than a penny to make, unless you're living in the year 1700 and then making that tiny little hinge with that tiny little screw in it. Do you know how hard it is to make tiny screws? The Swiss used to make all the clocks in the world because they were the ones that perfected the methods for making all the tiny gears and all the tiny screws that go in something like this hinge. These little tiny screws. Now you can replace the screw. You can buy a screw set and fix your own glasses for $2.50, right? At the hardware store. And the screws are made in China and they make 4,000 of them a second using modern lathes. And it's just a hinge in a plastic pair of glasses that are completely disposable. You can walk down the street on the sidewalk and you'll find a pair just like this. If someone fell out of the pocket, dropped in the gutter, and no one even picked them up. They just walked on them, stepped on them, broken to pieces. This is modernity. This is the modern world. And it's completely disposable. You get one scratch on the lens. It's a plastic lens. You get one scratch on the lens. Just throw it away. Fossil fuels. You think I don't know that? All my food comes from hundreds of, if not thousands of miles away, right? I got a watermelon here, probably came from, California somewhere, but the bananas will probably come from where? Brazil, Ecuador? Fossil fuels. Yeah, we love them. All my electricity actually comes from solar panels, but the solar panels come from China. How do they make solar panels? I don't know. I don't even care. How do they get over here? A container on a cargo ship. I don't even know. No one ever asked me. I never looked into it. It's all fossil fuels, all of it, 100%. Can't happen without fossil fuels. So we love our fossil fuels. And because we love our fossil fuels and because we need them for so many things, including continuous, constant, reliable economic growth, we will never get rid of fossil fuels. And that's the way it was going to be. And it doesn't matter that Donald Trump is now president and he's not going to get rid of fossil fuels. Guess what? Uh, Kamala Harris wasn't going to get rid of fossil fuels either. She wasn't. I don't think she ever campaigned on that. I don't think she ever said words like that. And be careful because people talk about, oh, we need climate action. What is that exactly? Climate action? Climate action. I mean, you expect me to know what that means. And I think I know what you think I think that means. But I really don't know what that means. Climate action. Did you know that if you say a word often enough to yourself, it loses meaning? It's actually a psychological principle. It has a name. I'm not even sure what it's called. It might be worth looking up, but I don't really care. If you say a word often enough, it becomes absurd and it becomes mouth noises and it loses meaning, which is really strange, right? That's really weird. You would think that the meaning of chair or dog or cat or something would just have meaning, that it's in your brain. And then now that it's in your brain in English, of course, as opposed to French or German or Tagalog or whatever, it would have meaning and it would always have meaning. And that you're like a computer and you pull it up from the meaning place and then you string it into sentences. But what has meaning is sentences, not words. And did you know that if you repeat a word by itself, not in a sentence, but by itself often enough, just like in a string, just say, you know, climate action, climate action, climate action, climate action, climate action. Eventually, it's just mouth noises because you're not using it in a sentence. You're not using it in a sentence. You're not using it in a discussion. You're just using it. And this is how platitudes work. If you say things to children like, "Don't worry, dear, it'll be fine," okay, then that's just a platitude. It has no meaning. And if a child is really distressed, but they're smart enough to know when they're being basically, you know, told to shut up, they might turn to you and say, "How is it okay?" Except they'd be looking up, right? Because they're a child. You say it's going to be okay. How? Exactly. With details. What if a child ever did that to you? You're patting them on the shoulder saying, "It's okay. We'll get you another dog. We'll get you another kitty. We'll get you another ice cream." And they turn to you and they say, "How exactly does that make this better?" Your promise to do that with details. What do you expect me to feel right now just because you said that? Because it's not working for me. I'm not feeling it. I'm sad and upset right now. And I'm going to stay sad and upset because that's how I actually feel. And your platitudes are not reaching me. Okay. How would you feel if a child did that? And climate action is like that. It's a platitude. It has no meaning. And adults are like children. Because in my example, a child would never do that. But adults don't do that either. Why is that? Because the words, "oh, we're going to take climate action, we'll have climate innovation," they contain no actual content or meaning. You don't know this, but any discussions of taking climate action are actually meaningless. Climate action, for one thing, is not in a sentence. For another thing, it's not prescriptive. It's not telling you to do something or to stop doing something. What is the something? The thing, a thing. Give me a thing. And action is just whatever. We're going to take action. If you were on a battlefield and you had a general and you're surrounded by the enemies and the bullets and bombs are coming in and your general is like, "all right, now we're going to take action." You'd be like, "okay, such as what?" Because we're surrounded, bullets are whizzing overhead, people are dropping like flies, and you're saying we're going to take action. And I'm wondering, we're going to do. A thing. I'm looking for a thing that I can do. Something I can do. And so when they're talking about, oh, well, we'll just take climate action. We'll just innovate. We'll just do this. We'll just do that. It's like, could you be a little more specific? Because none of these politicians are being specific because they don't have to be. They're into fakery. Donald Trump is fake. Kamala Harris is fake. Joe Biden was fake. And, Barack Obama was fake. And they're all fake. All of them. I have to really go back and think about a politician that wasn't fake. And if they were not being fake, if they were being real, then it's because of the example I just gave. The bullets are whizzing by overhead. The bombs are dropping from an altitude. Cities are being blown to rat shit. And at that point, politicians who now have to be leaders, darn it, I was hoping to avoid that, but now they have to do something. They must do something because their people are being killed in war and their cities are being blown to rubble during a war, and they must do something. And by the way, not all of them do. A lot of politicians who get sucked into war, meaning they weren't born to it, but they get sucked into it. It just happens to them when they're not looking, don't know what to do, and often don't do anything. And we rightly criticize them. We still talk about Chamberlain being weak and appeasing Hitler. And he's still dragged. We don't even know what he may have done during his political life that was amazing and brilliant and great. All we think about Chamberlain is just appeasing Hitler. That's all he did. And we had to have a whole new crop of leaders who basically came into a war scenario that the Chamberlains of the world couldn't manage because they couldn't stop being fake. They couldn't do something because they couldn't do things. They couldn't do. They didn't have anything concrete. And the Chamberlains of the world are now derided as do-nothings because as regard to Hitler, he was. And Obama was a do-nothing, and Biden was a do-nothing, and Harris would have been a do-nothing, and Trump is now going to be a do-nothing until the inevitable happens. And what is the inevitable? And why is it inevitable? The inevitable is this planet starts to veer hard into becoming uninhabitable. That's what's going to happen. That's already in play. That's already on deck. That's coming. In some places, it's here. Spain. I mentioned Spain, right? Go find my video a couple of videos ago about the problem with Spain. And go find my video about the message to the people of Florida, okay? It's a coming, folks. Spain, the Valencia region of Spain, a very high-powered, very popular, well-known tourist destination, was basically wiped out by floodwaters. And over 250 people died in Spain. This is a European country. This is a modern country. 250 people died. This isn't Africa or Bangladesh. This is Spain, right? Everyone has a cell phone. Everyone has a luxury car. Freeways everywhere, right? 5G, the whole thing. Spain, 250 people died in their cars, by and large. So they could have been somewhere else. They don't have to be in their cars. They could have been home. They could have gone to higher ground. They could have done a lot of things, but they didn't. They just drove around in their cars like everything was fine, and they died in their cars because of the flooding. And 10 days later, flooding in a different city, a different region. Same story. Roads become rivers, cars piled up to the second floor, and, it's the same story. Now, in Valencia, they said, oh, no one told us. This time around, 10 days later, a couple of days ago, people said, oh, yeah, well, we had warning. I don't think there was any deaths. So what did the politicians learn? Between Valencia and this other place, Catalonia, the region of. Between Valencia and Catalonia, they got engaged. And they stopped doing what they were doing when the storms hit Valencia, which was fakery, like this is not going to be a problem. And then when the same storms are similar, right? Whatever, it's the weather, global heating. When that came from Catalonia, they did the right thing. So politicians can do real things. They can actually get on the fucking phone and call the people and tell them, get out of your cars, get to high ground. There's a flood coming. They can act. They can do that. And Chamberlain could have done things different with Adolf Hitler, but he didn't, because politicians prefer to do fake things or ignore real things, which is sort of the same thing. If you're going to ignore the real things, then you have to offer a fake thing. And when Donald Trump says that global heating is a hoax, that's a fake thing because it's not a hoax. But that gets him off the hook for doing a real thing. And when Kamala Harris says, oh, yeah, we need to reduce the price of gasoline, it's so important to our economic growth, that's all fakery. Economic growth is a fake thing. It's made up. There's other ways to do things besides economic growth. And what we're going to have to do is contraction. And when will the politician come along who recognizes and admits that there's a real opportunity here to do a real thing, which is to degrow the economy? And we have to degrow the economy and have that as a topic and have that as a reality, because there's another reality, which is we must decrease, degrow, shrink our reliance on fossil fuels. We must leave them in the ground. And instead of increasing our fossil fuel consumption to float all the boats and give every child a pony, we must decrease our fossil fuel consumption and leave it in the ground. And right now, we pull 100 million barrels a day, that magic number, right? 100 million. Just let that sink in for a moment. 100 million. Yeah, that's a lot of anything. 100 million. People that voted for Donald Trump for president was fewer than 100 million. 100 million is a really big number, okay? 100 million barrels, not gallons, not cubic inches, barrels of oil a day, just to keep the wheels turning over every day, every single day. 100 million barrels of oil every single day, every day. 100 million barrels of oil every day, just to keep this shit show going. The shit show isn't real. It's politics. It's economics. It's jobs. It's growth. It's employment. It's money. It's banking rates. That's all fake. We made all that up. We made all that up. Most of those jobs are pencil pushing and trading stocks and massaging mortgage rates and spreadsheets and planning aircraft routes. It's just bizarre. But underpinning it all is a real thing. 100 million barrels of oil a day, every single day, 365 days a year. And it has to increase all the time because we need economic growth all the time. And the fake economic growth, which is just whatever people are doing, most of it isn't even feeding them, for housing or clothing themselves. Most of it's just doing things for other people. Do we need those things done? You're supposed to be growing food. You're supposed to be taking care of your children and your elders. You're supposed to be building your community. What are you doing? Driving 40 miles to sit in a cubicle and manipulate spreadsheets for some, banking conglomerate. That's all fake. Food, clothing, shelter, that's real. Children, elders, that's real. Death is real. Birth is real. And so, we burn fossil fuels, which is a real thing. And there's no politician that's ever going to say, oh, we should stop burning fossil fuels, because that will disturb their fake thing, economic growth, and getting elected and having leadership and, whatever, all the things that they would rather be doing, which is their job. Their job is to do these things, which are fake. And people will say, well, I can't live without, my job and my career and my commute and my car and my everything else. Oh, well, then you're kind of screwed, because all this fakery is going to fall apart. And why is it going to fall apart? Because it's based on a real thing, which is consuming 100 million barrels a day of fossil fuels. And that real thing is having real effects on the real planet where people really live. They don't live in cubicles. They don't live in mosques and churches and synagogues. They live in the real world. Their food, their water, their clothing, their shelter. They're either in the world or they're being isolated from the world and protected from the world, which means the weather. And pretty soon, the reality is going to come crashing down, that we can't keep doing this. It's going to get too hot. It's already getting too hot. And the heat in the system is driving these storms. And the heat in the system meant that 2 regions in Spain got wiped out 10 days apart. And the heat in the system means that 2 hurricanes came ashore in Florida 10 days apart. Real things are happening, and they're impacting the fake things. And guess which one is going to give? Physics is never going to give up, people. Physics never gives up. Physics never sleeps. Physics never has a crash. Physics never, increases in value or decreases. Physics doesn't stop anything to pray to Mecca. Physics never sleeps. Physics never cares. Physics doesn't give a shit. But you or me or anything else. Physics just is this stupid thing that's just this savage, cruel, indifferent universe. And we're spinning it up by burning 100 million barrels of oil a day, soon to be 105. And after it's 105 million barrels of oil a day, it's going to be 110. And after it's been 110 million barrels of oil a day, it'll have to go to 115 because that's how this shit works. And neither Donald Trump nor Kamala Harris, nor any party, nor any economist, nor anybody anywhere ever is going to put a stop to 100 million barrels of oil a day. And in fact, they're going to do everything they can to increase it. So you want to get your undies in a bunch about Donald Trump, putting a stake through the heart of all of our climate action. Well, allow me to suggest you know what climate action means. And putting a stake through the heart of something that has no meaning, it isn't even real, is really easy. How about putting a stake through the heart of our continuous and increasing reliance on fossil fuels to survive? How about that one? Can you put a stake through the heart of that? Well, you can't, because it's real. And if you do, real things are going to happen as a consequence. You need that oil. You do. And me sitting here talking about how you need to stop relying on fossil fuels is just not a thing for you. You just can't even think about that. I might as well recommend that you stop breathing. You can't stop consuming fossil fuels. And that's why this is going off the rails. This whole thing is going off the rails because of physics. Because physics doesn't care what you need. Physics doesn't give a shit that you rely on fossil fuels for survival. You're just going to have to deal with it. What happens when it gets hot and continues to get hot and gets hot forever? Someone's at the door. I will stop here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you do want to get more of this type of content, I come back here every so often. And we'll see you then.